part where I put together some interviews that I did with the cast of the movie, and I think you'll find it interesting because, you know, sometimes you see movies and you think, well, those people really aren't probably that good at actors. You know, they probably are just sort of exactly like those characters that they're playing. But you know, not in this movie. I mean, me, maybe, but nobody else really is very much like their characters at all. So I think this interview will sort of give you an idea of how good actors these people really were. I mean, it's kind of hard when you don't know who they are to understand that. So I hope it'll unveil that to you a little bit. And you just have to forgive me because, I mean, it is the first time I've ever done anything like this. So, you know, technically there might be some problems and, you know, the lighting isn't all that great and maybe there's some problems with the sound sometimes, but, you know, I think you'll get the general idea. I mean, I just forgive me. I'm just new at this, so I'm no professional. Now, you know, I think that one of the best things about the film was the fact that we had such a great conglomeration of people working on it. I mean, we were really lucky to have those people that we had. Like, I mean, BETH BOSTIC. She was from Germany. What was she doing in Winston-Salem? Making a movie.
You know what I'm saying? He's a cop.
And, like, I mean, the writer, Angus MacLachlan, I mean, well, maybe he wasn't famous for being a writer then. Everybody knew him. I mean, really, in Winston-Salem, you could even say he was a legend. I mean, you just know him right on sight. If you saw him, you knew that was Angus. That's Angus. Just pointing out to people, you know, he was just like a town fixture. And, well, Phil, he was sort of an unknown quantity, but Michael Huie, I mean, he was British, and he was a famous actor at the time. SELLARS was very famous, but in Winston-Salem. He went on to be really famous, though. I mean, look at his successful career as a movie maker.
If you ever go in your video store and you see a production that's a jackhammer production, then you know you're seeing quality born.
What were some of the titles of some of your films maybe other people might have seen?
Well, I was responsible for Booty Call 2, Booty Call 3, Booty Call 4. Then some other people picked it up, made Booty Call 5, 6, and 7, which quite frankly wasn't anywhere near the quality of Booty Call 1 through 4. But, you know, I didn't, it's kind of like when Tim Burton made Batman, and then the second Batman, he was only like half, and the third when he went there, you know how Batman went down? I'm the Tim Burton of porno. And then, well, we were so lucky to have Mary Lucy Bivins.
We've canceled the matinee so that you can make your appearance at the Tony Awards ceremony that they're having downtown. Mm-hmm. And another dozen roses from Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane. Where shall I put them?
Oh, how sweet of them. Put them with the others.
Very good, madam. Oh, and Katie Couric, 9 o'clock, NBC.
Oh, well, someone will have to ring me because you know I'll sleep right through that.
I'll ring you, madam. Let's try and keep this short.
Yes, indeed.
Really, I mean, her career has probably been the most explosive since the movie Tater Tomater. But then also Evan Bivins. I mean, we were really lucky to have him.
Nobody cares that you finally fell in love. Nobody really gets it down. Nobody cares that you finally fell in love. Nobody stops watching that.
Because who knew that he was going to go on to be such a famous drummer in such a hugely successful band? So it was sort of the synchronicity of all those people coming together that I really think made for such a successful film. Now, one of the interviews that I do is with one of the production assistants because, well, he contacted me. I mean, when he first contacted me, he had seen about that I was making a DVD on the website and he wanted to know more about it and maybe be involved. But, you know, I didn't really remember him from the filming of the movie, but, well, I invited him to come over and just be interviewed. But the first time I invited him over, he just didn't really have a lot to say. What does that mean exactly, production assistant?
I don't really know, because, I mean, to be dead honest, I just kind of sat around all day. There's some free food, I think. And you know, we were filming it over New Year's and stuff, so it was like free booze eventually. You know, they brought out some champagne, but
I asked him questions, but he wasn't very forthcoming. Did you know anyone that was involved in the project?
no, really, no.
But then he contacted me again, and well, you know, I just didn't want to say no. I mean, I'm no person to be eliminating people from this movie. I should be getting everybody who wants to be involved in it. So, well, he came back, and really his contribution was much greater the second time around. So I'm glad that he came back, because that first time it just wasn't very successful. I wanted to know, for the people that were cast in the movie, how did they get involved in the project? Miss Bostic.
BOSTIC.
Miss Bostic, excuse me.
Betty BOSTIC.
How did you become involved in the project?
Well, I was taking a holiday between my studies before I would go to pursue my doctoral studies at the University of Hamburg in semiotics. And a very close, dear friend of mine who was involved in performance arts was working in New York City. And I went to visit with him and to see the United States. And he invited me to join in the spontaneous performance arts, which was happening on the Washington Square, very close to NYU campus, where afterwards Philip Morrison approached me. I was being a cow, and this intrigued him, I think.
You know, I was 14, 13, and originally, it was, you know, my friend Gary got me the role. He couldn't do it. Gary, you know, Gary Coleman was supposed to be Jimmy, and he was just he was kind of having a hard time. He was like, "Hey man, I got this job for you," and I said, "Cool, you know, whatever." And you know, the rest was, you know, kind of history. And it ended up, you know, it was good, you know. Still waiting on that check.
I got a phone call. Angus. Yeah, Angus. Anyway, he called me, and he said, "Do you want to play this part?" And I said, "Yeah." And so we got together. I'd known Phil since, I don't know, since Phil was a little kid. He was a juggler. I remember that. He was a good juggler. Anyway, so yeah, they called. They said, "Do you want to be in it?" And I said, "Sure," because I was really wasted. And I said, "Sure." I was saying sure to everything.
I don't know, I'd skipped school that day, and I was just walking through, you know, the park that sort of was close by the cafeteria. And I don't know, you know, I was just kicking around, you know, just bumming out, and I saw these dudes, you know? Like, one was small and one was really tall. It was like Mutt and Jeff going on, right? So I was like, "Dudes, what's up? You look like pretty special people." Like, and they were, man. They totally were. They were like, "Come on in. I don't know whether you can help us or not. Just come on in." And I did. I just kind of hung out. Like, I don't really think I did anything.
I was working there. So, you know, when they came in and they were looking for people to be in the movie, and then they were asking people, some of them that worked there, if they wanted to, like, be in some of the shots and everything. And I don't know, that they just came up to me, and I think they must have liked the way I did my job and how friendly I was with people. And I think they just sort of, it came naturally to me, and they couldn't find anybody else to do it as well, I guess. And so when they asked me, I mean, I was so flattered. I had no idea. I mean, you work in a job like that, you just don't think that someday someone's going to come in with a damn movie camera and start taking pictures of you. So I was really nervous when we did it, but it was really fun, so I'm glad they asked me.
Well, I wasn't doing anything at the time, of course, and so my agent suggested it to me, and by the title I thought it was going to be some sort of segment on your hee-haw. In any event, I'd never done anything in the hillbilly genre, so I said I would do it.
How did I get involved? You know, it's been so long ago, it's really kind of difficult to remember, but it seems as if I was, you know, wearing a little uniform or something, a waitress's uniform, and this young man just came along and said, "You'll do."
And that was it? He just picked you out?
I said, "I'll do what? I beg your pardon, I'll do what?" The next thing I know, I'm slinging butter and margarine.
I wondered what people thought of the direction of the movie. You know, it was Phil's first movie, and I was just curious what the actors thought of his directing.
I'm sorry.
He
which one was he?
He wasn't very tall. He had long, brown, kind of stringy hair. He was behind the camera a lot. You might not have seen him very much.
Oh yes, the elfish one.
Yes, that's
Right.
him.
Oh yes. Well, I thought he was adequate, certainly. I mean, I suppose he told me a few things. I ignored them, of course. But, I mean, he was fine. He certainly seemed to point the camera in the appropriate places. I think he kept it on me, mostly.
Kind of short, long hair.
The dwarf?
That was him.
I thought he was Thor.
Did he tell you that?
Well, he showed me his hammer. I remember that much. No, that was the point I was working on. That was Thor's hammer.
You know, he took that juggling talent, he threw it away to become a director for some reason.
Well, Philip Morrison has a tremendous sexual magnetism, and of course this attracted me. Of course, I believe that for the artistic tension to be maintained, it must be sacrosanct, and of course ultimately will evolve into revulsion and self-loathing. Francie, you have to be patient, I'll be there.
I think personally, Phil Morrison, yeah, I got no problem with Phil. Long story short, he called me a couple of years ago, asked me to be a part of a commercial. It would have been the only acting job I'd ever had since this film, and I felt like he owed me, if you want to know the truth about it, since he's the one, along with Angus, who sent my career down on a down spiral that I've never recovered from. But basically, you know, he sort of offered me this handout of some ad for some candy bar. I don't know what it was. And I think it was pretty obvious, you know, that Phil had no respect for me. So again, if I sound a little sour, I don't mean to. It's just that you know, these guys really were the beginning of the end for me.
Is that what his name was? Phil. Oh, I kept calling him Bill. Or Will, or one of those names. Phil. What was the other part?
Morrison.
Morrison. Well, that's a wonderful name. I don't really remember seeing much of him.
I did ask Phil to expand my character. I felt that perhaps it was Mr. Bowen who should have the breakdown, and not that other woman who was playing the woman with the, oh my goodness. In any event, I suggested that Mr. Bowen have the breakdown because I felt that his inner crisis was foul. I remember, I believe I was on set and I demonstrated to him the way Olivier had shown me how to have a stroke on film. Very technical. There are 5 steps to the stroke process. I won't bore you with them now. Perhaps later it might make a very interesting tape. But I did remember I showed this, what did you say his name was?
Phil.
Phil. And he sort of nodded and smiled and went on. Think what this picture could have been if it had been about this man.
When you met Phil for the first time, what made you want to work with him on this project?
Well, that's a funny story. I actually met Phil when he was just a baby. His family lived down the street from our family, and we had a pig, and I took the pig down and I traded the pig for Phil. So he came to live with us.
Well, in the beginning, when I was having the strong sexual attraction, I thought he was an idiot. But the more he repulsed me, I could see that there was a deep genius there. Yes.
You drank a lot, I think, of milk or something. I don't know what that was. Milk and magnesia, maybe.
Did you think he did a good job directing your movie?
Well, from what I can remember, I think he did. He wasn't very old, was he?
No, he was very young.
Yeah, like 6 or 7?
Not quite that young, but he was in college.
10. He was 10 years old. He looked like he was 10 years old.
I agree. Phil, well, I had a good impression of him at the very beginning because he's the one that asked me to be in the movie, and I thought he looked kind of young to be a director. I mean, I wasn't very old, but I really kind of thought, well, you know, it's just kind of something he's doing as a project for school, not a big deal. And so he was not very intimidating. And that was good for me since I wasn't an actress or anything. And he worked with me really, really calmly, and he told me just what he wanted. And, you know, I don't have anybody to compare him with because I've never worked with any other director. So I would say he was good. He was really, really good at what he did.
Well, I think he was always behind the camera. Perhaps that's the reason. Phil, you say? Well, I should really write that down, or have, what's his name, write that down for me. Is that it?
Oh, no, we have just a couple more questions if you have the time.
Well, we must hurry because...
Phil.
Morrison. Is that it? Morrison?
Morrison.
Phil,
Yes.
like the cafeteria. Morrison's cafeteria. Phil Morrison. I'll make a note of that.
Thank you.
Let's try and move this along, shall we?
I really wonder what people thought of Angus's writing because, well, it's a unique story, don't you think? And I wondered if it just jumped off the page when people read it the first time, or if they really had to think about it, or if they really thought, like a lot of people do, I think, well, we'll be a part of it, but hopefully we'll change a lot of it while we're filming. What gave you the idea to write the script?
Well, they say that you should write what you know. So I just thought of things.
Angus I've known, forever and ever and ever. I've always suspected that Doris is really based on Angus. It really seems that way to me. He's worn that hairnet for as long as I can remember, and I don't know, that could be wrong, but there's something about him that reminds me of her a little bit. And I would often just go for dinner at the cafeteria, and he'd be there and serving, and I'd get like spaghetti and meatloaf or whatever and he'd be there. So I've known him a really long time.
No, they didn't give me a script. They just said, hey, you're a white guy who thinks he's a black guy, go. And I was like, all right, you're a cold that thinks he's smallpox, go. I don't know. Anyway.